All right, let's go ahead and dive back into part two of the Singapore math comparison. If you missed part one, I'm going to go ahead and add that right here. And if this is your first time here, welcome. I'm a homeschool mom to a third grader. We love all things books, homeschool, and sharing our journey with you. And if that is something that you are interested in, I would love if you consider hitting that subscribe button. And let's dive into this video.
All right, let's look into the teacher's guides really quick. Okay, now again, you can go and you can get all of these samples on Singapore Math that we were just looking at. But you know what? Sometimes it's just nice to see it. So I'm just going to open up to the very front of all of these. Now do realize that I have one second grade and I have two third grades. So these two are going to be more comparable than this one, but you still get an idea. Now because some of these books are so giant, it's going to be hard to show you all three at once, okay? So let's start with dimensions. This is the chapter opener, okay? This is the teacher's guide. The home instructor's guide, I looked at the samples online and they're really, really close. The big difference is you're not going to get the color. It's no color. It's all black and white. And they word it just a little bit different for the parent. But I was looking and it was really very, very little difference. They showed kind of the same examples. Super, super close. But this is the kind of notes of the chapter for chapter 1. This is dimensions, okay? Here is the chapter overview in Primary Mathematics 2022. This is the home instructor's guide, so it is all black and white. We have an overview, and then they also have this big chapter at a glance where it tells you everything that's going to be in that chapter, the learning objectives, the vocabulary, resources you might need, and different materials, okay? So that's Primary 2022, and it does carry over into that right there. So here is Primary Math US Edition. It's a lot different. We don't have a whole like big chapter opener so much on this one. We're kind of just jumping in and we're doing it. So with this one, it does get a little bit more to the point. It's going to clearly kind of tell you, okay, this is what we want. This little triangle here is kind of your information. So you can see we're looking at a big difference here on kind of this chapter opener of what are we doing, okay? So that is different. Now let's go ahead and go back to dimensions where we have, they go ahead and they give you the materials. I did forget to flip that for you. It has the materials there. The materials that you're needing are over here. And I did show you here that they had that right there. So I apologize I didn't show all three of that at the same time. Chapter opener here. We have an objective and the lesson materials. Gives you a little bit of what you are going to need to like do to get your student started, and it shows you your student's chapter opener. That is the biggest difference between the teacher's edition and the home instructor's edition, is you're not going to get this in the teacher's edition. That's why you might want this. So that's a big thing to consider for your teacher's edition versus your home instructor's guide. If you're going to be using dimensions, is that right there. You get that. That is really, really helpful sometimes, but not necessary. But I do want to point that out for you. Here is our first lesson. I almost always will do the chapter opener with the lesson 1 because there's not really any work with the chapter opener for the most part. It's like hands-on, and all of this is heavy manipulatives, okay? Singapore Math is manipulative heavy, so know that right off the bat. All three of these manipulative heavy, okay? So we have our lesson 1 where we have this think, learn, do. Again, they're showing you all of the student pages here in their textbook. You're going to go to the activities. The activities are going to be different depending on if you have the teacher's guide or the home instructor's guide. Teacher's guide is created for more than one student. Home Instructor's Guide is created for one student. So this is going to be different for you. Most of these can be easily adapted for one student. This little pencil tells you to go to the workbook. Let's go to the chapter opener in Primary Mathematics 2022. They're giving you some teaching tips and what you want your student to consider. If I'm remembering correctly, and I really wish I still had the workbook so that I could show that to you, the recall pages are like a practice before we get going. So there's like some review somewhat built in here with these recalls. Before we move on to the other pages, you want them to do different things. And all of that is set up. We have games. And there's different questions that we're going to have. All of the answers are over here on the side for the recall for your student page. So even though you're not seeing your student page like we did in Dimensions over here, you are getting all of the answers right there. Then you're going to go to lesson 1 where we are doing some counting on. So this is where we're doing the lesson, count to 1,000. So we had this like recall practice thing, and then we go to the first lesson. As I said before, we just kind of jump in with this one. So we are going to go to the student book. You'll do the learning task together, and then you'll go to the workbook. The original, I feel like, kind of takes out some extras. It's more streamlined on we're going to get to A to B to C. And so it's a lot straight line. Like I said, it's not a whole lot of extras are added into it. Whereas these, I feel like, have just a little bit more added into it, maybe a little bit more depth. You're going into the topic a little bit deeper with the dimensions than you do with this. I think if you have a student that needs more practice, you're going to have to take note of that more so with the US edition than you would with Dimensions. I think Dimensions is going to bring it around a little bit more and a little bit deeper than the US editions is. All right, let's look at the amount of work that you're going to have on a lesson, okay? So if we're on Dimensions 1, we're going to have this. First, we're going to have the chapter opener back here, which is just this one page here. And then we're going to have this page, this page, this page, this page, and these 2 pages. Okay, so we have 2, 4, 6, 7 pages for one lesson. Okay, this is where I'm talking about we're going a little bit deeper with this before you get to your workbook page. Now, if we were going to do a lesson, I'm going to ignore the recall review section here. If we were going to do a lesson in Primary Math 2022, it looks like we have a few learning answers here. So we're going to work together. So we would have 2 little questions there. We would have 4 questions here. And then this would be the workbook section of their student book, where they're practicing on your own. So this doesn't dive in quite as much on like written paperwork for the first initial lesson as Dimensions does. Dimensions gives you lots of options for going deeper or going shallower. If you don't want to cover all of these things, hit the few that you need, go on. If you need more with this, you're going to need to go back and practice some of those things in a different way with Primary Math 2022. I have the textbook here for my US edition. Now let's come over here and let's look at Primary Math US edition. I'm doing lesson 1. We're going to talk about these things together. This is kind of our chapter opener and learn section. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to do these 2 questions right here before they would go to the workbook. And I think it's somewhat standard that between all 3 of these, you have this little pencil looking banner that takes you to the workbook. Okay, then they would go to the workbook exercise number 1. Going over to the workbook, another pro for getting the teacher's guide of Dimensions Math is in the back of the chapter, you are given the pages for the workbook. This is really, really, really cool. You don't just get the answers, you actually get the workbook page. And I'm gonna put a card right here of why that would be really, really cool to have this in here, okay? I have a whole flip through on Dimensions 3A. So here you can see for Chapter 1, Lesson 1, Exercise 1, these 3 pages are your exercise. That's a lot. Now, disclaimer, Dimensions does not expect your student to do all of these things. They actually right now on Instagram are doing this thing on differentiation. It's awesome. Follow these. If you guys are interested in Singapore math, follow all of these things, and it really, really can help you with so many things. So they were talking about with a student that might not be advanced, that's maybe struggling. You're not going to want to do these challenges, okay? Skip them. Don't frustrate them with that. Start with the top and work your way down, okay? Maybe take this basic section, and it says some of them are very clear on basic. Okay, we're going to be a beginner student here, okay? We're not going to be a super advanced student, so we're going to do this basic section here. Maybe you're going to work with them more with manipulatives. You have a student that's pretty good at math, but you wouldn't say that they're advanced. You're going to keep going. You're going to do the basics, and you're going to do some down on this practice. Maybe you're not going to do the challenge every time. Maybe you want to challenge them occasionally, but you have an advanced student, and then we're going to be the further you go down, the more difficult it gets, is what Singapore Math said the other day on their Instagram post. So when you get to the challenge, it's going to be more difficult. So again, they also said they built this big workbook so that you didn't need intensive practice like they recommend sometimes with the US edition. You don't need the Mastery and Beyond book like Primary Math 2022 because Dimensions put all of that in the workbook. But it's on you to decide how much is enough. And that can be difficult sometimes if you want an open and go. It can be difficult sometimes if you're just starting as a homeschooler and you're like, I don't know how much I need to give. So it can be cumbersome to have this much, but if you know how to do that, if you are comfortable with figuring out what your student needs, this is great. Okay? Really, really great. Now, if we go back to Primary Math 2022, their practice on their own, you can see we're looking at 4 questions with a few bullets added in there. And then there are some more resources that you could do the additional practice and things like that. If I can find any samples of those, let's pop those right here.
All right, here is the student book. We have the practice on your own. So this is after you've done the lesson. This is what they would be doing. You can see it's adorable. Okay, practice on your own. Here's some questions, the answers they write down there. It's really, really cute. The learn together is what you would have done first. So you're going to practice these things together. This is first grade that we're looking at. Here's those cute little characters. So you can see why she loves this because it's adorable. It's really, really cute. And while we're on here, let's just go back and look at something else from the primary math since I didn't have very many options to show you. Here is the additional practice. So this is your separate workbook. We have, again, the cute little robotic character. We're going black and white. But not a lot of work. You can see there's just not very much work in comparison to what we're going to see with the Primary Math US edition and the Dimensions. Because I don't have the teacher's guide for this, we'll just quickly look at the teacher's guide in case you wanted to use that instead of the home instructor's guide. Nice and colorful. You have the pictures of the student pages there. Lots of extension and additional support. And then here's one more page for that.
All right, so again, this is for the student that is not super advanced. This is your beginning introduction to primary mathematics. This is kind of a soft start to getting into that. Now let's look at the workbook. This is your independent work for the student. They're going to have exercise 1 for lesson 1. And that was the end. So 3 pages on that. You can see it's a decent amount of work, but not an overabundance of work. So I would almost always assign all of the work for her, but there are times where it is a little bit more. Here was exercise 11, so you can see that it is a little bit more work, but not super crazy. But I do not do intensive practice, and I do not do the additional word problems with this, which might be something that is suggested. All right, are you guys still with me? I hope this is helpful. If it is, put me a comment down below, give me a thumbs up. Let me know this is what you're after. All right, let's jump into a few more things. I think I've already covered this, but we have very colorful versions, and we have not so colorful versions. US edition, starting in 3rd grade, it goes to this one color muted. Dimensions keeps this really nice colorful pages, okay? Primary is really, really nice and colorful. You have these cute little characters, and that is a big difference between these is they keep going. Now the workbooks are black and white on all 3, okay? We have Teacher's Edition and Home Instructor Edition, Teacher's Edition, Home Instructor Edition, and I believe we just have Home Instructor Edition. Maybe there's a Teacher's Edition, I don't know, but there might be. Here we have separate workbook, separate textbook, separate workbook, separate textbook. Here we have a student workbook that is going to have the student work and the workbook together, but you are going to need to add that additional practice. So you're still looking at 2 books probably. I didn't use the additional practice with this one. This starts with pre-K. I don't know if this one starts at pre-K. If it does, I'll put a little note right here. But this one has pre-K. This one does not have pre-K. We have a small teacher's book. We have a small home instructor's guide. We have a large home instructor's guide, large teacher guide, smaller home instructor guide. Primary, original, dimensions can easily be taken back and forth, okay? Let's say you're doing 3A and you just realize that this isn't really working. You can go to 3B really easily. There's only like 1 chapter that's going to be an issue. And then this one you can't. You cannot easily jump from here to these or from these to here, okay? If you are leaving or going to this one, okay, you're going to need to do some extra research on that one. Primary mathematics can be somewhat difficult to match up on because of their addition. So you need to make sure, especially if you are purchasing used, you need to make sure that you have the same standards in your teacher's book, in your workbooks, in your textbooks. You don't want to get like a Common Core, a US edition, and a standards edition of all 3. That wouldn't work very well for you. So that can be a difficult. This, it's all in one. You just know that if you're getting Dimensions 3, it's all in one. Same thing with this. It doesn't have separate editions. It's just Primary Math 2022. All right, let's go to a few questions that you guys asked me. All right. So first, simplest, less overwhelming, and most straightforward parent manual. Okay. That is a little bit difficult to answer because I'm not you and you're not me. And so what I find easier, you may not find easier. Okay. There are times where I favor both of these. I look at Dimensions sometimes and it's my favorite because I like the way that they introduce a certain subject. But then I have Primary and sometimes I like the way that they introduce that subject. I personally, this just didn't work for me, so I didn't love this one. But that doesn't mean that it's not easy to use. Overall, Singapore math is not easy to teach, okay? It is different Kathy Duffy, that's one of the reasons that she kind of gives this one a knock, is because Singapore math isn't easy to teach sometimes. Let's go ahead and let me rabbit trail really quick. There are online options for teaching your student. Dimensions Math has online lessons. I believe it's $85 a year. Again, go to Singapore Math. It will show you that, okay? It's on there. I believe it goes to 6th grade right now. It teaches your student, okay? So they will pull up, a teacher will teach them. It shows the teacher. She's got the whiteboard. There's examples. I believe you can see like the whole first chapter maybe as a sample. Check that out. Remember, singaporemath.com. That's for dimensions. I believe that goes to 6th grade. Now, there's also something called Singapore Math Live, and there is a lady that has online teaching. It is different because she teaches the teacher. So it's for the parent. She is showing the parent how to teach the subject, and then you pass that on to your student. Again, I believe that's $85 a year, and that is for the year. So the $85 is you only get 3rd grade, or you only get 4th grade. And so that is a problem if maybe you're in between, or you go faster, or you go slower. That could be a hiccup, just to kind of think about that if you would. But yes, primary mathematics and dimensions have teaching alternatives for online. So if you don't want it in your hands, dimensions can, I think, take it out of your hands a lot. Primary mathematics can really help you understand everything and show you how to present it really well to your student. So that's an option. If you want to easily teach it, look at that online version. And then it went back to the most straightforward parent manual. I feel like this is pretty straightforward. Singapore Math is, I feel like primary math is pretty straightforward. It kind of tells you this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to play, this is how we do it. Okay, so this one is a little bit wordier. Sometimes wordier isn't always better. It can get a little bit like, what? But not always. Like I said, there are times where I preferred this one. If we look at Primary Math 2022, it had a lot. It has a lot of teaching tips. It has a lot of additional support. It has focus questions. Depending on how many words you like and how many little extras, this might be a really, really good option. Again, go on there and look at a comparison of Singapore Math. Try to pull up all 3 of the same levels and see if you can look at primary, at dimensions, read through one lesson and see how you like it. Oh, the STEM stuff. Okay, question number 2, STEM stuff. This is the only one that has STEM things. Let's see if I can find possibly an example. When we look at our chapter pathway on this, you can see right here that at lesson 8 of chapter 1, we have a STEM project work. All right, here we go. We have day 13 of 17, and it is our STEM project work. This was for chapter 1. Now, unfortunately, this was pixel art, okay? I wish I had pages to show you, but unfortunately I don't. But it was pixel art, okay? So we researched pixel art, and then the student decides on a number of different colored pieces of paper to create their pixel art. Then your student is going to make the pixel art as planned. And then number 4, part 4, is invite your student to share their pixel art, inspiration, formation of ideas, and any patterns that they used. That is one of the STEM projects. Let's see if I can find another one. Real quickly, here it was. Here's an example of the project work for that pixel art. So you can see they kind of did a watermelon there. So that was what that one was. Okay, here's the next one, the project work. Your student is given an opportunity to make connections between engineering and mathematics. Okay, your student is going to research about charities. Your student is to use resources from the library or the internet to help him or her gather the information and then decide on a charity researched in part 1 that they would like to raise funds for. Okay, so it's very different. It wasn't quite what I expected the STEM to be, but it is. If you don't do subscription boxes, if you don't do anything like that, that could be really, really nice to have added in here. Here we have your student is given an opportunity to make connections between engineering and mathematics. The student is to design and set up a game for a games day. Your student is to apply their knowledge with addition and subtraction to decide how to play his or her game. So that is the STEM that is included in each chapter. You're going to have one STEM project. Again, it's a little bit different than I anticipated STEM to be. We didn't use it much because she didn't care for the activities, but that's part of this one. That's not part of anything else. All right, the next question I had was how to transition from one to the other in my preference. You know, just when I think I have a preference, I do a video like this and I don't know anymore. My preference is dimensions math or primary math. That is my preference of these two. I think that she slightly prefers dimensions because she likes the interaction with the students. She really liked the interaction with the critters here. They were really, really cute. But this just is not a good fit for us. I personally didn't like it, and if I'm not going to like something, I'm not going to be as excited and I'm not going to teach it as good. So I know that about myself, so that's why that one had to go. And she didn't love it, so I was able to just be like, okay, this is one, I want the full Singapore math teaching. I want that scope and sequence of Singapore math, and so these two are my preferences. I honestly think I will probably jump back and forth between these two because one, I can do it really easily. And that was my other question, is how do I transition from one to the other? So just real quickly, if we look at the scope and sequence, I can tell you that my big difference here between the two, one other thing that I think is awesome about Dimensions is they put the whole scope and sequence of everything up to 3rd grade in this one, and I love that. I really like being able to see this. Anyways, so I can tell you that the big difference here is that in 3A, we are going to cover graphs and tables. In 3A of primary math, we're going to cover money. It's flip-flopped. So in 3B of dimensions, they're covering money. And in 3B of primary math, they're covering the graphs. So it's usually something really easy that you can make up for if you want to use these two like that. So if primary original is not working for you and you want to switch to dimensions, you can do that really easily. If you want to switch from dimensions to primary original, you can do that really, really easily. It's always been something like that that's super easy to do a sidebar on. So you're not gonna miss out on the big stuff. The big stuff, they're almost identical. Very, very, very little difference in their teaching scope and sequence. So that is really, really awesome. It is possible for 4th grade, I will go to Dimensions and I will start using the online teaching because that program completely takes it out of my hands and gives it to her, but I can still be very involved if I want to. So that works for my really busy schedule, and that's something to keep in mind too. What does your schedule allow? This has the online, but it's more teaching me to teach her. And if I'm going to pay for the online, I would like to have the option of if I needed a day, she could just be completely taught independently. And that's probably what I would maybe do for 4th grade. But I love these both. I wish I could say this is the Holy Grail, this is the Holy Grail. I can't because I like them all. They both have pros and cons. And so I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you, but I like these both. I will say that these two are definitely my favorite of them. All right. Somebody wanted to know if primary was more challenging. So for my next question, is primary more challenging? No, not these two. I think these are probably, I saw somewhere, and I will try to find it and put it right here. I believe it was Singapore Math put it on Instagram. This is the most advanced. Dimensions is the most advanced. Primary Mathematics US edition is in the middle, and then Primary Math 2022 is the easiest of the three. So in level of difficulty, we have Dimensions, Primary, and Primary. So most difficult, next, easiest. Okay. The next question, which version has the best mixed review? Okay. Primary, let's look at this one. Primary Math 2022 has these recall sections. Remember, I showed you that at the very beginning. Of every chapter, there is a recall, and that is assessing your students' readiness for the chapter so that home instructors can allocate appropriate resources during the lessons. Okay, so it kind of has a little review built into the very, very beginning. At the end, we have chapter practices, where it is going to take all the concepts and the skills that we talked about during the entire chapter, and they're going to bring it back around, and we're going to cover that in the chapter practice. So that is a review. There's also this in Primary Math 2022, this self-reflection, where they kind of reflect on their learning, and I'll try to show you that right there about they're looking at the things that they've been learning, and they're putting yes smiley faces, or 2 I'm not really sure, or 1 smiley face of no, I didn't get that concept. And so it's kind of another check there for you. There's the chapter test that you can do as well. So Primary Math 2022 has some pretty regular review built into it. So you have it at the beginning and you have it at the end. So this does have some good review. I believe that also someone, I think in the comments, said something about online that there's home instructor guide, like maybe additional information for review with the primary math. I'm not for sure on that one. There is review built into this as well. Not quite the same as 2022, but let's see. All right, if I come to this scope and sequence, or schedule, I guess you would call it, you can come down here and we have these different practices, and there are mental math, which is somewhat of a review. Now, I know there's reviews in these workbooks. Let's look here. So we have our chapter 1, we have our chapter 2 with all the exercises and then the review. We have chapter 3, review, chapter 4, review, chapter 5, review. So there are reviews built in there, and they're pretty large. Let's see if I can find one. Okay, here's review 2, where we're definitely looking back, kind of a spiral approach. We're doing some things where we're writing the numbers. So there is some review here that isn't just related to that specific chapter. It's bringing in multiple subjects of things that we have learned up to this point. Here is another review, and this is more, again, it's throwing in some things that wasn't necessarily talked about in that chapter. So that is the reviews that are in the Primary Math US edition. Coming over here to dimensions, let's see. I know there are reviews here. Chapter 4, we have a review, number 1. And then we have a review number 2. So it looks like maybe the reviews aren't quite as prominent in the dimensions as they are in the other ones, but like I said, you're also going a little bit deeper into this one, which I think is kind of solidifying the learning there and not necessary to have as much review possibly. Oh my, I bet this video is getting so long. Hang in with me. Let's finish some more questions here. Lesson length, if you follow what's recommended. Primary Math 2022, I felt went quite quickly. Now, depending on how long your student is going to practice with the manipulatives and things like that, that's really going to add on to it. For us personally, I just set a time limit. I don't so much do lesson. If we don't get one lesson in one day, that's okay, because we'll pick it up the next time. But if I was going to just complete a lesson, I would say that Primary Mathematics 2022 would get done the quickest. Primary Math US Edition would get done probably within 30, 45 minutes. That's counting workbook pages. I don't know, again, this is based on how your student completes things, how long they're messing with the manipulatives. And dimensions math, if you wanted to go and do it all, you're looking at a good substantial amount of time here, but they don't recommend that, okay? So that is going to be, you need to base that on how much work your student needs. In general, we do math to some level for 1 hour every single day. Now, you may not want to sit and do that for 1 hour solid, but we don't do primary math for 1 hour. We're going to do some primary math and then we're going to do something else. So 1 hour out of the day, we are doing math. Maybe you need to split this up. If you have a student that maybe doesn't have a lot of attention span, maybe let's do the chapter opener, or let's do something with the manipulatives. Let's step away. Let's come back and let's look at that chapter where we're doing things together in the chapter. Let's step away, let's come back, and let's do some workbook pages. That's just an idea. All right, the scope. I had another question. The scope and sequence differences, are they on or above grade level? Overall, I think Singapore math is a more difficult advanced math from the get-go. Take that placement test. It's on singaporemath.com. It's free. Make sure you know where your student is before you jump into Singapore math. As far as the scope and sequence, dimensions and US edition are going to be pretty much the same. Very little difference. Primary Mathematics 2022 is much different. So look at those scope and sequences. Do the placement test for all of them if you're interested. Don't do a placement for dimensions and then buy Primary Math 2022. Not going to work. So do the placement for the one that you are most interested in. One more question. Do we use challenge star problems for dimensions? Yes, sometimes, not all the time, because as I said, Dimension says that is for advanced students. It's very, very difficult. If we are having problems getting that concept, I'm not going to throw that challenge on there right away. I may not throw it on at all. That is going to be on a lesson by lesson basis of if we're doing the challenge questions in the workbook. This is the textbook. The workbook has the challenge questions. As far as for my daughters, like I said, Primary 2022, she loved the characters, but honestly, it was mainly just the characters. She loved the little animals. She's crazy about animals. She thinks probably that she likes Dimensions the best because of the mini games that are in there, and she likes to help the characters. The characters have little projects that they might need help with. They ask her questions. You can see here little examples. They're talking to her. She likes that. This is very game-based also. And then to wrap things up, honestly, it's your best fit may change, and that has changed for us before, is that one semester, maybe this one was the best, this one was the best the next semester. When I have both like this, I honestly like using them both. I'm not going to do that in the future because it's just, I got lucky and found these used at a really good price. Otherwise, I wouldn't have them both. My next thing is we started with Dimensions in kindergarten. I would not change that for the world. I adored Dimensions for kindergarten. It worked so well. We absolutely loved it. The games were amazing. And if I knew what I knew now, I probably wouldn't have ever left Dimensions because I know now that I don't have to do it all. It had gotten too heavy, it had gotten too difficult, and I didn't realize how I needed to back it up so much. Then I used primary math and I just loved it. It was really, really nice. It was open and go and it was streamlined, like I said. And so then that's where I realized I loved these both. If I could go back, I would not have stuck with this for so long. I don't know why I stuck with this for so long. I paid the money for it and I had a fear of missing out. I wanted to use it. I didn't love it, but I kept sticking with it. And so I don't encourage you to jump every semester, but I do encourage you that if you have went a full semester and you are not happy, try something else. I mean, you're really not happy. Not just that, oh, we don't like this. You're really, really unsatisfied. I do encourage you to try something else if possible. There are even free things, even if you go and review. Sorry, I rambled there, but I wouldn't go back and change it. I would absolutely do kindergarten for this. If you are in the earlier grades, I can't imagine how wonderful probably the pre-K is if you wanted to start that, but the kindergarten was amazing. Absolutely loved it. All right, that is a lot. That is a lot. There's no telling how long this was. If you stayed to the end, give me a smiley face down in the comments or a whew emoji. Give me something down in the comments if you're still here with me. If you found this helpful, please hit that subscribe button. Give me that thumbs up. If I missed anything or if there's anything that you have questions in, put it down in the comments. I try to continue to regularly answer questions as we go. Like I said, I'm still learning, but I hope this has been helpful. Thank you so much for sticking around, and I'll see you in my next one. Happy math!